Subscribe to Dr. Nightmare Channel now.
Story 1. The House That Waited. Michael and Andrea Eldon thought they'd found paradise. After years of working double shifts and saving every spare cent, the couple finally bought their dream home. A 2-story colonial nestled at the end of an overgrown cul-de-sac in the sleepy town of East Hollow. The house had stood for over a century, but had recently been restored, or so the listing claimed. It still looked time-worn, though. Weathered shutters, an ivy-choked chimney, and a porch that creaked like it remembered every step ever taken on it. To Andrea, the place oozed character. To Michael, it oozed problems. But he'd never seen his wife smile the way she did when they first pulled into the driveway. She called it a fairy tale house. He thought it looked like the kind of house you'd find abandoned in the woods in a horror movie. Still, they moved in on a brisk autumn morning, their breath fogging in the crisp air. Yellow leaves drifted down from massive trees that seemed older than the house itself. The backyard was a jungle of vines, dying flower beds, and statues, at least a dozen of them, moss-covered and strangely positioned throughout the yard. That was the first red flag. Andrea loved them, she said, brushing moss off a cracked stone cherub. Like guardians. Michael wasn't so sure. Some of them had their faces worn away by time. Others seemed almost too intact, like they hadn't aged at all. One in particular, a tall angel with wings folded across its chest, stood at the edge of the yard, facing away from the house and toward the woods. "That one's weird," Michael said. "Why is it facing the trees?" Andrea shrugged. "Maybe it's protecting us from what's out there." Michael didn't laugh. The first week passed quietly. The couple settled in. Michael fixed leaky faucets, and Andrea cleaned out the neglected rooms. The attic was filled with dusty boxes labeled in smudged handwriting, names like Miriam and Jonathan and Matthew, all written in different ink, all the writing old. They never opened them. On the 5th night, Andrea woke up screaming. Michael shot upright, heart pounding, and found her staring at the window. She said she saw someone in the garden, a man tall and thin, just standing among the statues. Michael ran outside with a flashlight. There was no one there. By the 2nd week, the statues had started to move. At first, Michael thought it was his imagination. The angel had shifted slightly. Instead of facing the woods, it now stood at an angle, half turned toward the house. He told himself it was just the light or the way he remembered it. Then another moved. A stone woman holding a jug was standing 5 feet from where she had been days ago. Andrea noticed too. She tried to stay calm, but the fear crept into her voice. "I think someone's messing with us." Michael checked the security footage from the small outdoor camera they'd installed by the porch. Nothing. The statues never moved on camera, only in real life. They stopped going into the garden. Andrea began locking every window, every door, every night. She drew all the blinds, even during the day. She started leaving the lights on in every room. Michael tried to stay rational. He checked the grounds, set up motion sensors, bought extra locks. But the feeling remained, an itch under the skin. They weren't alone. On the 20th day, Andrea vanished. Michael came home from the hardware store to find the front door open, her car still in the driveway, her phone on the kitchen counter. No sign of forced entry, no broken windows. The back door was locked from the inside. He tore through the house, yelling her name. He sprinted into the garden, slipping on wet leaves, screaming. She was not there. But the statues had moved again. Now every single one of them faced the house. All of them, including the angel. Michael fell to his knees in the dead grass, surrounded by stone eyes. He screamed. The police found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a struggle, no suspects, no body. They questioned him for hours, told him to stay local. He didn't leave the house. He couldn't. Something was wrong, not just with the garden, with the house itself. It groaned differently now. The walls seemed tighter, the ceilings lower. Whispers flitted through the vents at night. When he checked them, there was nothing. When he didn't, they grew louder. He started dreaming of statues. In his dreams, they were weeping, not blood, not water, stone. On the 31st day, he decided to burn the garden. He poured gasoline over the roots, over the vines, over the statues. His hands trembled as he lit the match. The fire didn't spread. The gasoline evaporated. The statues didn't even blacken. On the 40th day, he saw Andrea. She stood at the edge of the woods, barefoot in the frost, pale and still. He ran to her, sobbing. She didn't move. When he reached her, she crumbled into stone, into dust. He went mad, they said. When the police came, they found him naked in the backyard, kneeling in a circle of statues, whispering to them, begging them to let her go. The house was sold again. The next owners never noticed the statues at first. They thought the garden was beautiful. They never saw the angel move, but it did. Every night, until it stood facing the nursery window. Epilogue. Local legends call it the house that waited. No one remembers who built it. The records are patchy. The land was cursed, they say, taken from someone long ago, a punishment never undone. The statues are older than the house. No one knows who carved them, but everyone agrees on one thing. Once you live there, you never really leave. Some part of you always turns to stone. Story 2. Below the Floorboards. When Ethan and Rachel Harlow bought the Madsen house, they thought they'd scored the deal of a lifetime. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a full acre of land on a quiet, tree-lined street just outside of Asheville. The house had been on the market for nearly 2 years. Price slashed twice. No bites. The realtor called it a fixer-upper with charm, though that charm mostly came in the form of peeling wallpaper, outdated tile, and a strange, stale odor that clung to the air no matter how many windows were open. Rachel was 6 months pregnant with their first child when they moved in. Ethan promised her he'd have the nursery ready within a week. He never did. The house had moods. That's what Rachel called them. Some mornings it felt warm, almost welcoming. Sunlight would pour through the windows in golden sheets, the air soft with a comforting breeze. Other days, the same rooms felt cold and claustrophobic. Doors stuck, the lights flickered, the hardwood creaked like it was sighing. Ethan told himself it was just old bones.
The house was nearly a century old. He wasn't about to let a few quirks scare him off, especially not after the down payment had nearly bled them dry. But the basement, that was different. They hadn't spent much time down there during the walkthrough. The realtor had opened the door, flicked on a weak dangling bulb, and said something about usable space for storage. Ethan had peeked in, seen the concrete floor, the cobwebbed beams, the unfinished walls, and decided that was good enough. They only went down there once during the move-in. That was all it took for Rachel to say flatly, "I'm never going back down there." It started with noises. Scraping, soft thuds, a strange shuffling like someone dragging their feet across gravel. Ethan assumed it was rats, or maybe raccoons, but he could never find a nest. No droppings, no fur, no evidence at all. Only the sounds. The smell came next. Rotten fruit, wet rust, moldy wood. It came from the vent near the kitchen island. When Ethan pried off the grate, he found nothing. But the smell grew worse every time he turned on the heat. It seeped into the hallways, clung to his clothes. He bought air purifiers, cleaned the ducts. Nothing helped. Rachel said it gave her nightmares. She dreamt of people crawling beneath the floors, eyes in the cracks, breathing behind the drywall. A month after moving in, Ethan's toolbox vanished. He tore the house apart looking for it, swore he left it in the upstairs hallway. Rachel hadn't touched it, neither had the contractors. They found it 3 days later, in the basement. Sitting on the old wooden table in the far corner of the room, covered in dust as if it had been there for weeks. Rachel was furious. She said, "I told you I didn't go down there." Ethan replied, "I know, I believe you." But he didn't. Not until the next thing went missing. The baby monitor. It vanished from the nightstand one evening while Rachel was in the bath. She called Ethan in a panic. He searched every drawer, every room. Nothing. Until the static began. From behind the vent, the soft white noise of a baby monitor humming beneath the house. Ethan descended the basement stairs with a flashlight and a crowbar. He wasn't sure what he expected. A prank? A squatter? The basement was empty. Almost. In the far wall, the one they'd never inspected closely, was a wooden panel. Unlike the rest of the concrete walls, this section had been boarded up, painted to match the surrounding stone. If he hadn't been looking for it, he wouldn't have noticed it at all. The boards weren't nailed tight. In fact, they pulled away easily. Behind it was a door. A narrow wooden door, old, unmarked. He should have stopped, called the police, told Rachel. But he opened it. It led to a crawl space no taller than 5 feet, with dirt floors and rough timber beams. And in the center, a cot, blankets, a pillow, half-empty water bottles, food wrappers, and the baby monitor, still on, still crackling. Ethan stumbled backward, heart racing. Someone had been living there. No, was living there. And then he heard the whisper, "Don't wake her up." Ethan spun around, flashlight trembling in his grip. Nothing. The crawl space was empty. He backed out, sealed the panel with screws, nailed boards across it, locked the basement door. When he told Rachel, she broke down sobbing, begged him to call the police. He did. They searched the house, the basement, the crawl space, but it was empty. Again. Probably an old setup from a previous owner. Creepy, sure, but no sign of recent activity. Ethan didn't argue, but he changed the locks, installed cameras, slept with a crowbar by the bed. 2 weeks later, the baby came. They named her Violet, and for a time, things felt normal again. Happy. Safe. Until the night the monitor clicked on. At 2:11 a.m., Rachel was asleep. Ethan had just gotten up to use the bathroom when he heard it. A voice. Soft. Raspy. "Hush, baby. Don't cry. She's almost here." Ethan sprinted to the nursery. Violet was gone. The crib was empty, the window wide open. They searched the house, the yard, the woods. They called the police, the FBI. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Only the baby monitor left on the nursery floor. Still whispering, "She's safe now. She's warm. She's ours." Rachel never recovered. She stopped speaking, stopped eating, stared out the window for hours at a time. Ethan tried to stay strong, tried to fight. He tore down the basement wall with his bare hands, but the crawl space was gone, vanished, replaced with solid concrete. Years passed. The house was sold again. The new owners, a young couple, found it charming, quirky even. They loved the old floors, the strange layout. They never opened the basement door until they heard the crying, until the baby monitor turned itself on. There's something under the floorboards, not alive, not dead. Something that waits. It watches. It remembers. It wants a family. And it always finds one.
Story 3. The Neighbor in the Dark. It was the first home he'd ever owned. After years of cramped apartments, roommates with no sense of boundaries, and noise that never stopped, Alex Marshall was done renting. At 32, he'd finally landed a stable remote job in tech, saved up enough for a down payment, and closed on a modest, 2-bedroom house tucked in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. The neighborhood was quiet. Families with strollers, retirees walking dogs. Lawns were kept, mailboxes were painted. A tiny American flag waved from every other porch. It felt safe. Too safe, maybe. He moved in on a Thursday, spent all day unpacking, slept like a corpse that night. The next morning, he stepped onto the small upstairs balcony to have coffee and check his email. That's when he saw her. In the backyard of the house directly behind his, an older woman stood perfectly still, staring up at him. She didn't wave, didn't blink. She just watched. Alex froze. He looked over his shoulder, wondering if maybe someone else was on their porch behind him. But no, it was just him. He waved politely. The woman slowly turned and walked back into her house. Odd, he thought, but not worth getting worked up about. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she was just old. Still, he avoided looking toward her yard for the rest of the day. He asked his neighbor Dan about her a few days later. "Oh, you mean Miss Wren?" Dan chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, she's, kind of the neighborhood ghost. Been here forever. Keeps to herself." "She seemed intense," Alex said. Dan nodded. "She's harmless, just weird.
My kids are terrified of her, though. Say she watches them through the fence." Alex tried to laugh it off, but he couldn't shake the feeling. At night, her windows were always lit. A pale, sickly yellow glow. No movement, no silhouettes, just the light. Alex began to notice other things, too. The bushes in her yard were never trimmed, but were never overgrown. Her porch had no furniture. Her mailbox was taped shut. But the scariest part, she never seemed to leave. Not once. A week later, Alex woke to a strange noise outside. He looked out the window and saw her again, standing in the middle of her yard at 3:14 a.m., barefoot, wearing a long white gown, staring up at his window. He ducked down instinctively, heart racing. When he looked again, she was gone. That morning he found something on his porch. A small ceramic bird, cracked, painted black. Its wings spread mid-flight, but its eyes scratched out. No note, no explanation. He didn't tell anyone. Alex tried to move on. He filled his days with work, jogged in the evenings, kept his curtains closed. But each night he felt it, a presence, watching, from the trees, from the shadows, from her yard. One day, a neighborhood kid went missing. 12 years old. Name was Carter. Disappeared while biking home from school. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle. The community was devastated. Alex attended the search effort, knocked on doors, searched the wooded trails near the cul-de-sac. When he knocked on Miss Wren's door, no one answered. He peered through the window. The lights were off. The inside, empty. Not dusty, not abandoned, just void. That night, he dreamed of her. In his dream, she stood at the foot of his bed, whispering something he couldn't understand. Her eyes were gone, just hollow, gaping holes. When he woke up, he found dirt on his floor, in a perfect trail from the back door to the bedroom. He changed the locks, installed cameras, began keeping a baseball bat by the door. A few days later, the backyard light flickered on. Motion activated. He grabbed his phone and checked the live feed. The screen showed nothing, but the camera's timestamp kept jumping. 3:02, 3:02, 3:02. Every second the same time. Then it cut to black. When he checked the footage later, it was gone. The next morning he finally snapped. He walked to Miss Wren's backyard, climbed over the fence, knocked, then pounded on the back door. Nothing. Then he noticed the side cellar door. It was open. Darkness gaped beneath. He should have turned back, but he stepped inside. The smell hit him first. Damp earth, mildew, something else, metallic and sharp. He used his phone flashlight. The cellar was larger than expected. Dirt floors, wooden beams, dozens of ceramic birds lined the shelves, all cracked, scratched, eyeless. And in the center, a chair, old, rotting, and a figure slumped in it. It was her, Miss Wren, but she was dead. Long dead, mummified almost, skin clinging to bones, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Alex staggered back in horror. That's when he saw the tape recorder. He pressed play. A distorted voice rasped through the static. "You see me now. You know my name. I needed a face. Then the tape snapped. Alex turned to run, but he couldn't move. The air around him felt thick, heavy. And then from behind, a whisper. "Now I wear yours." They found Alex 3 days later. He was standing in his yard, perfectly still, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, didn't blink, didn't move, didn't respond when they called his name, just stared at the house behind him. Epilogue. No one knows who Miss Wren was. No records, no family. Some say she was never alive at all. Just a shape, a watcher, a thing that waits for someone new so it can wear them next.